Like I promised you earlier, I do have a visitor on the farm from K-State. I have Dr. Raymond Cloyd with us today, so I'm just going to kind of hand it over to him. It's just going to be kind of a generic Q&A. I'm just going to kind of ask him some stuff, get his opinions on things. So it's great to have an expert here on the farm today. So Raymond, you just tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do for K-State.
Yeah, Tracy. I'm the horticulture entomologist. I have a 70% extension, 30% research deployment. I've been at Kansas State for almost over 20 years. And my responsibilities are horticultural entomology, and that includes greenhouse, nursery, turf grass, interior-scape, conservatory, Christmas trees, fruits and vegetables, cannabis, hemp, and pollinators. So my goal is to help producers, mostly in regards to plant protection or pest management, minimizing or alleviating problems with insect or mite pests on the various crops.
Okay, so like I was explaining to you earlier, how did this happen? or it's like I don't have the terminology, but I've never really noticed a problem with thrips, and that seems to be what the issue is. And that's how this all started. Is I noticed some issues with stuff. I reached out to a couple experts. They put me in your back pocket and said, hey, this is who you need to get a hold of. This is who you need to talk to. They will help you, try to help you work through this issue. And so how would this have happened in a designated insect-free zone, pretty much how I looked at it, as something that I've been growing in for the last couple years?
Okay, I think you and I talked about that earlier, is you brought those plants out from the seed bed and you put them out here. Now, one of the issues we have is you do have some insect screening. The problem is that insect screening, the mesh size, thrips can still go through that. So if you have weeds outside an area, they'll move in because the salad is like a buffet to them, and they'll start feeding. So really, my hypothesis is, Tracy, that they came in through that screening, you potted them up, they built up this population, and all of a sudden you noticed the feeding damage and the thrips poop on the plants.
So apocalyptic is what all I could think of was my head was like, holy cow, how did I not see this? Am I not being a good enough gardener, and am I not being cleanly? You know, I try to pride myself on the way our high tunnels look, how weed free they are, how clean they are, clean of plant debris, of clutter, tools, anything like that. And then to hear that, it's almost like it kind of slumped around a little bit, thinking, well, I did this, you know, and is it something that I did that would cause this, or is it more nature, or just happens every day and people just don't notice it?
Well, you went 9 yards, but you didn't go in for the touchdown, Tracy. And one thing you're missing was the scouting aspect. When you put your plants out, you need to do scouting. That can be using your little sticky cards, visual inspections for those insects and mites that can't fly. But if you had put some yellow sticky cards just above your lettuce crop, you would have detected those adults. And that would have told you, I need to do something, whether it's spray with like spinosad or do some other aspect of what we call the plant protection pest management. That would have alleviated the damage or the plants that I saw.
How severe they were.
They had this heavy infestation. Yeah.
Okay, so
everything. So it's all proactive. And the old adage is, the more you do on the front end, the less you do have to do on the back end. So if after you planted, you put yellow sticky cards, or even put some yellow sticky tape to mass trap them, that would have alleviated the infestation you had.
Okay, and that's something I've never done. You guys know from the prior video and stuff, I do have cards out here now underneath your thought process. You told me, hey, I need you to go get some sticky cards. I need you to put them out for 3-4 days, and then when I show up, we'll see what we've collected. And I promise we will get down and we'll see what we've collected.
Yeah.
So this is probably something I need to be doing year round then. I probably need to be more proactive on like items like this, like having sticky cards out, especially in high tunnel areas, I guess, because I'm pretty much, this is its own culture in here. You know, I'm kind of separated from the outside pretty much. So I probably need to be a little more, and I thought I was. You know, maybe I would have saw this 2 months ago, and I would have noticed it.
You know, you're doing everything right, Tracy. I mean, you want to remove weeds because weeds will harbor the insects and also be reservoirs for the viruses that thrips, aphids, and whiteflies will transmit. So you're doing, but it's more holistic. So in addition to, like, you're keeping the weeds down, keeping the beds down, and you still have to scout. Scouting, if you're not scouting, you're going down the road with blinders on.
Okay.
You have no idea the trends and patterns that are happening in your hoop house throughout the year. Also, you have to do the visual inspections, like for aphids, because they're not going to be caught on yellow sticky cards. So you have to do two types of scouting: is active, going out looking at your plants for mites and aphids that are not captured on yellow sticky cards, and you got to do the passive, where you put these yellow sticky traps out there that captures adult whiteflies and thrips and fungus, that the winged individuals that will be attracted to it. So it's a holistic strategy, and just scouting is a part of that. It's cultural, physical, mechanical, chemical, and biological.
I'm going to put insect netting on the side, and you know what? I will never have any other insect issues ever in my high tunnels going forward. And so this is the first year in both the tunnels that we've had insect netting. And I did what most people did. I got online. I bought the best insect netting I could afford. And I went through, I won't say what the company is, but I went through a national brand company that sells insect nettings, that sells all silage tarps. They sell, I mean, that's what they do for a living. I bought high-end insect netting, and I think, to be honest, I think it was 8 foot by 100-foot roll, cost me like $100. So, I mean, I spent good money on it. It's not like I went to Amazon and bought the cheapest insect netting I could buy and put on here. I actually spent good money, on this stuff. So I thought a couple $100 investment for both tunnels was going to keep me insect free. And you brought up some stuff about insect netting that I was unaware of, and I'm sure a lot of you are unaware of. Could you kind of explain that a little bit?
Yeah, what the insect netting is designed to do, you mentioned like hornworms, is to keep the adult stages from moving in. The females would lay the eggs on the plants. The larvae would emerge, and that's when you get tomato hornworms and fall armyworm and these other caterpillars. But there are various types of these we call insect screening. There is insect screening, there's antiviral screening, and the difference is the mesh size. So for thrips, we want to use the antiviral screening because because they're about 2 millimeters long and they're very narrow, they can squeeze through the netting. So if you're having problems with thrips, then you want the antiviral screening. Now the downside of that is it restricts the air movement. So it's going to get warmer, and you may have to have more fans, horizontal airflow fans, but that will keep the thrips out and keep everything out at that point.
So what I need to be asking is, or for all of us, what we need to be asking is, hey, is this an antiviral type of insect netting? So we know for sure what we're spending our money on. I just assumed insect netting is insect netting, and I was going to be safe.
No, they come in various mesh sizes. You can get ones that restrict like whiteflies and aphids, but it'll still allow thrips to come through. So if you really want to restrict thrips, which vector viruses, and that's why they call it the antiviral screening, you want that antiviral screening because the mesh size is such it'll keep the thrips, it'll restrict the thrips or exclude them from coming into your operation or your.
See, always learn something new here, guys. Always learn something new. All right, I guess let's get down and dirty and check out some of these cards.
Yeah, and can I explain what this is for?
Yes.
What Tracy's doing is I recommend this is. He's putting sticky cards just above the surface of the growing media, and what he's doing is finding out what insects will come out of the soil. In western flower thrips, pupates in the growing medium and soil. So when the adults come out, they will get captured in the yellow sticky cards, and you'll know if you've got thrips actually inhabiting or residing in the soil of the growing medium. So this is an idea I think that many producers should implement if they're dealing with insects that actually have a life stage that is in the soil. What we're looking for are you'll catch various insects that are on here, even non-insects like springtails, and we're looking for thrips. And this card doesn't have any, which means that there's nothing coming out of the soil, in this case overwintering, but we've got maybe fungus and adults that'll emerge because the fungus and adult larvae and most of the life stages in the soil. So this gives you the key of scouting is early detection. And this gives you an idea of what maybe to expect later on, but this card really doesn't have any insects that we would consider problematic. Springtails are not a major pest. Many of these insects on here would not be of a concern to any of your crops that you're growing in a hoop house or any type of a greenhouse related, we call indoor environment.
Okay, so should we check out a couple other cards and see if maybe, because this house here, like I was explaining to you earlier, this is the one that I had 3 65-foot beds of Salanova and head lettuce in. So we had 1,200 heads of lettuce in this, and this is the house that I lost everything in.
Yeah, I mean what we're seeing mostly is this parasitoids that'll come in naturally, but really we're not seeing any thrips, which is good, indicating that they haven't had a life stage that's then in the soil and then emerging as an adult.
Okay, so I literally just pulled all this lettuce out of here about 2 weeks ago, and those are the samples that I sent, that I brought to you, that you looked at. So where did they all go? Did they, when I pulled them out of this tunnel, did they go with them? Like because I took all that lettuce up to a burn pile that I always burn all my squash and tomato debris and stuff in, and I burned them. So were they on that lettuce when I transported them out there, and that's where the majority of them went, or did they crawl back into the soil possibly, or did they go back through the netting and find something else to eat? And why are they not on my green beans and my basil?
Well, let's go back to the fundamentals of the biology of the life cycle of the thrips. The females lay the eggs in plant tissues. The larvae emerge from the eggs, and there's 2 larval end stars. The second end star then goes to the bottom of the plant and enters the soil. And then you have 2 pupal stages, and then they come out as an adult. So to answer your question, Tracy, is when you took everything out of here, you took the larvae and adults with them, because those are the samples. I got some samples, and I found larvae and some adults on those lettuce samples. So the fact is that you're not getting anything on the cards indicates that the second instar larva did not enter the soil. So when you took these plants out, you took like larvae and adults on there, and that disrupted the life cycle.
So that was good. That's a good thing.
Right. Yeah. One aspect of thing is, if you've got a heavy infestation, rogue out the plants and remove them. Now we recommend, if you have an operation with a lot of plants in there, put them in bags, because if you're moving them through your greenhouse, they could come off and get on your beans and some other plants that are in your structure, and they'll start an infestation.
All right, so we're in what I call the big tunnel. It's a 20 by 100. Overall, looking at what I do have in here, I do have some peppers in here. Of course, there's, I noticed there are a little bit of aphids on here. I do spray this once a week in here, but I don't get crazy. A lot of times it's me just kind of shaking them off. But is that something I should be worried about spreading to other things in here, or possibly taking over, or what I'm doing, just trying to be a little, not so, that's a ladybug there.
Ladybug larva.
Ladybug larva.
Yeah.
So what you're looking at there, so that's ladybug larva there.
Yes.
So the reason why that ladybug larva is there is because
you have aphids.
We have aphids on the leaves here, which you guys can see.
Yeah, you have aphids here, and and right here are molting skins of the aphids. As they shed their skin, they go through what we call molting or ecdysis. And this is when you see a lot of that, and you see this, if you see this this kind of a glazed material here,
correct,
that's sticky honeydew. And as aphids feed, they exude it out their back end. And sticky honeydew is a great growing medium for black sooty mold.
Oh.
So really, this you want to be out here monitoring, scouting, because aphids in a greenhouse or hoop house don't have to mate to reproduce. All of them are female, and they're all clones of each other. So this one ladybug, though, larva will not manage all those aphids. Yeah.
Okay.
So what you're doing, so you can use like a hard forcible water spray. You can use potassium salts of fatty acids, insecticidal soap, or some type of mineral oil to kill them. Yeah. But remember, you want to make sure your plants are water irrigated the night before, and you want to apply them in the early morning or late in the evening, because in the heat of the day, you can burn your plants.
Okay, so you always want to make sure, and see, that's something I didn't know also, is you always want to water them really good the night before you spray.
You don't want them water stressed in any place, Tracy, because that will lead to potential, we call phytotoxicity or plant damage.
Okay, see, that's something good to know, because that's something I did not know.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, see, it's one of those guys, we always talk about tools in your toolbox. This is a great tool for your toolboxes to remember that. So aphids is all you see. You don't see any type of anything else that could be causing, like any thrips or anything?
No, I don't see thrips. Mostly it's mostly aphids.
aphids.
Yeah. So you can see this. So you can see that glaze. That's sticky. We call honeydew, and a couple of, you can see a little bit of molting skins, and that's from when aphids molt. They shed their old skin off as they develop. Yeah.
Okay, so I do have some carrots in here, which I think look okay.
Yeah.
Now the cucumbers, did you notice anything with the cucumbers? These have been in here for 2 weeks.
Yeah. So what I'm looking, the major insect on these would be aphids. That's why. But remember, when you're dealing with insects and mites, everything is on the leaf underside. So you have to look on the leaf underside, because they don't like UV sunlight. especially this time of year when the sun is higher on the horizon, the days are longer. So you have to look on leaf fungicides, and if you're going to spray with any insecticide or miticide, you have to get on leaf fungicides because you need to get thorough coverage, and most of the materials out there have very short residual or persistence, and that means you may have to spray maybe twice a week, but the coverage is critical in getting high mortality or kill of your targeted insect or mite pest.
We are in my back room here, and I just kind of wanted to show what the stuff that I have here on the farm that we use, and just kind of get your ideas about it, and if I'm using the correct items, or am I using something incorrectly, or not what it's for. I'm just kind of curious on an expert side to tell me if this is what I'm using is what I need to be using, or should there be something else I should be looking into. So pretty much, we kind of stuck everything up here. So first of all, let's start with the easy one. This is just basically just Monterey Horticulture, basically just mineral oil. Well, what do you think about mineral oil for use, for what I'm using it for?
Yeah, mineral oil, all oils are suffocants, Tracy, and so you spray them, they cover the breathing pores of the insect. They also, the benefit is they kill eggs by suffocation. So their contact, very minimal residual, but the bottom line is their only contact, so thorough coverage of all plant parts, especially fungicides, is critical. Because if you just spray the top here, you get no mortality, or you're not going to kill anything. You have to get in leaf fungicides.
Okay, so for sure, we've always been told to make sure that we get underneath the leaves. So that's what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
So that's something we need to. But mineral oil is pretty good. This is good for me then.
Mineral oil is a very broad spectrum material. It'll kill beneficials, but it doesn't last as long as other materials out there.
Okay, so let's go on to the next one that I've used. This looks like pyrethrin. It's more of like your orchard spray.
Yeah, well, it's got two active ingredients. Sulfur is a miticide and a fungicide. It's been used for a long time for powdery mildew. Sulfur is a miticide, but pyrethrins is a plant-derived material. We call them botanicals. And it's derived from the chrysanthemum flower, Tennessee cinerifolium. It's one of our oldest materials. They grind them up in a white powder, and it's used for killing aphids and a lot of soft-bodied insects, not so much caterpillars and beetles. But the issue is, again, and one of the downsides of pyrethrins is it doesn't last long in the environment. You spray it, in an hour it's all gone. But most critically, you got to get thorough coverage of all plant parts because it has very low residual activity persistence, which means that you're going to have to probably spray it again.
Okay, so it's the same as what the mineral oil would be. So if any time it rains or anything, or is there, you were mentioning something earlier that I didn't know about being with the UV and stuff on that.
Yeah, the pyrethrins are very susceptible to UV light degradation. So if you apply it and it's a lot of sunlight, it can be broken down within an hour. So it doesn't. That's where it doesn't last long. Very, very short residual activity.
So that's the reason why you should probably be spraying this more towards late afternoon, early evening,
or early in the morning,
or early in the morning.
Early in the morning or late in the evening, because during the heat of the day or when the sun's out, it's going to be broken down by UV sunlight.
Okay, so that's something you want to make sure that you water your plants really deep good the night before, and then use this either in the morning or later that night.
Late evening.
Okay, so those two things are working, right? That's stuff that I should be using.
Yes.
That I'm good
Those
with.
are fine, yeah.
Okay, so I've got some garden inspect spray here. It looks like it's spinosad. Is that something we should be using?
Spinosad is it's a sort of like a bacteria, but it's really good against three types of insects: caterpillars, thrips, and leaf miners. That's what. So for your thrips on your lettuce, Tracy, that would have been something you can use early on. You can also use for caterpillars. It works on most caterpillars.
I use them on hornworms. When tomato hornworms is what I've been using.
Well, when they get too big, it's too late. You don't. What it is a stomach poison, which means the insect has to eat it to be effective. But it's very good on thrips, caterpillar, and leaf miners, which get into leaf tissues.
Okay, so that's something I should probably be looking into having on hand then.
Yeah.
For how much lettuce that I grow here.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we have neem oil. We were talking about that earlier. Can you explain the differences maybe between that and just good old-fashioned horticultural oil?
Neem oil is derived from the plant called Azadirachta indica. It's the neem plant, and basically it's extracted from the seeds, and the active is clarified hydrophobic extract of neem oil. It is just like most oils as a suffocant. However, it doesn't last as long because it's a botanical, just like pyrethrins. So most of your botanicals don't have the residual activity as your synthetic or other materials out there, but it will smother the eggs, kill larvae, nymphs, and the adults, just like your typical mineral oil will. So,
Okay, so what we were talking about, what I was bringing to your attention, we were talking about earlier, is for what you use here on horticultural oil or mineral oil, and then neem oil, this literally is a better deal. Like neem oil is like crazy expensive compared to buying a bigger bottle of probably 50% more expensive, or 100% more expensive. I think this bottle of neem oil was like $12, and I think this was like $4.
Yeah. Well, you have to look at the concentration of the active, Tracy. This has got 70% active, and this has got 80% active. So yes, you want to go with the horticultural oil or the mineral oil.
Okay, so that's good to know.
Yeah.
And the other thing we have here, we were talking about, since we were talking about this permethrin, you were explaining to me the difference between this one, oh, that's the spinosad one. That one there is pyrethrin, and this one here is permethrin. What's the difference between the two bottles, or what are they about?
Okay, the major difference is that pyrethrin is the natural botanical from the plant. Permethrin is a synthetic derivative. We call these pyrethroids. Permethrin is longer lasting in the environment. You use it in your mosquito. You use it for mosquito repellent. You don't apply on your skin. But it's a broad spectrum insecticide. It just lasts longer than pyrethrin is because it's synthetically derived.
So the permethrin is man-made.
Synthetic.
Synthetic.
Yes. Yeah.
And so if you were trying to be, which we've talked about in the past, I'm not organically certified here, so I don't like, I like to practice as organic as possible. So this is something, if you were an organic farm, you could not use this at all then.
No, but you could use it for your Japanese beetles feeding on the elm, because you're not going to harvest that or feed on it, but that would kill the Japanese beetle adults too.
Okay, so that's something good to have just to try to kill those Japanese beetles in.
Yeah.
Okay. Guys, I think that's going to be a lot for us today. But so what I did want to just talk about a little bit is to just kind of go over a couple things. So with I know I keep jumping back to the thrip problem. It sticks in my mind because it's just something with me. So basically doing what I'm doing right now, trying to be as proactive as possible now that I know that there is an issue or a possible issue going on. So the yellow sticky cards, stuff like that. Is there anything else I can do besides just hands-on leaves, or would you suggest changing that insect netting out to a different quality of insect netting to try to help me with that in the future? Or do you think that would be more harmful with the wind, like you were talking about? It's less wind that gets to come in because it's a smaller mesh. Well, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, Tracy, I really don't think there's any rationale to remove the netting. I mean, you're keeping most everything out. But what I do recommend is putting some yellow sticky cards on stakes and putting them right outside the netting to see if you are getting them come in.
Oh, that's a great idea. So actually putting them outside of the high tunnel to see, and if we notice those cards have a lot of thrips on them, then we know, okay, well, they're coming from the outside now. Yeah. So you do know where they're coming from. So.
Yeah, gives you, again, early detection. And you can put like maybe 3 on each side, put them on stakes. And that way, if you catch them, you know they're coming in, and to be aware that they could be inside your crop if you're growing lettuce again, and just be aware. Again, the more you do in the front end, the less you do in the back end. But the more proactive you are, the more options you have in dealing with this insect and mypest when you do have a minor infestation.
Okay, so like in these tunnels, like I always talk about to people is your most expensive piece of real estate on your farm is going to be high tunnel ground. I grow a lot of lettuce in that high tunnel. Now, should I have would a better rotation would have helped me on that possibly? Because I'm very bad at rotating the lettuces in the high tunnel because I've only got 2, so they've got to go somewhere. Mm-hmm. So I tend to try to maximize that space. Now, would rotation have helped me with this? Like if I would have made that a cucumber tunnel this year, or a tomato tunnel or something like that, or is rotation really that prominent that we really need to be thinking about that?
That's a very good question, and I'm really not sure that rotating would have benefited you at all inside the hoop house or the high tunnel. I mean, the fact is thrips probably came in, established on your lettuce, and then built the populations, and you noticed them probably too late, unfortunately, in this case. I would really just say just keep growing the lettuce, but be more proactive on your IPM or your plant protection strategies to minimize the prospects of having another infestation like you had this year.
Like the sticky cards, doing a little more turning the leaves over, checking things out, asking people questions. that's probably a bad one for me, is I don't reach out a lot.
But you always want to make sure, number one, your audience needs to be sure is identify the problem first. What an insect is, what mite is, because that will allow you to determine, okay, what's the life cycle, what's the potential damage, what's the potential direct and indirect damage, does this one vector viruses, which means the concern is much greater. So really, insect identification or insect and mite pest identification is critical in dealing with these in the future, and that's part of your management strategy. If you know it's thrips, then you know the life cycle and you know what options you have in minimizing an infestation for next crop or for next year.
Okay, that's great. Well, I want to thank you for hanging out with me the last couple hours, and it's a plethora of knowledge. I'll tell you that. You've basically you've kind of flipped me upside down here. Now you know, there's a lot of things that I never would have even thought of, or didn't even think, or didn't even know. And you know, the thing is, like we always talk about, is that, you know, there's no set book on gardening. There's no set book on being a market gardener, or being a backyard gardener, or being a commercial gardener. You can try to pull little pieces of information from people to try to steer yourself in the right direction. But until you actually sit down and talk to somebody that's an expert in their field, to explain it to you, it makes a big difference. And so there's a lot of things I learned today, you know, that that kind of just I was unaware of. And that's why we try to bring content like this to you guys, and that was the whole purpose of this series, is to bring people to your front door, to your TV screens, that you guys don't maybe not get the chance to talk to. So I do appreciate you coming to the farm today.
Yeah,
Thank you
you're
very
welcome,
much
Tracy, yeah.
for being here. Guys, as always, be safe, be kind, and make sure you get your hands dirty, and I'll talk to you guys next week.